Good afternoon, everyone. LJ here, the Go Biz Guy, podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. Wow. So let me start this off. Step into the world of coffee. Roasting is just not a craft, but cherished family traditions. At Henry House of Coffee, located in San Francisco's Sunset District, Harag Karabajin, great guy, continues his father's legacy that began in vibrant markets in Lebanon. With each batch expertly roasted, oh man, I tell you what, they've got some really good Armenian coffee. Henry's offers not just a beverage, but a getaway to rich coffee excellence dating back to the 1965. Here, every cup promises a unique blend of culture and quality. For those of you who wish to bring the experience home, go visit henryshouseofcoffee.com. henryshouseofcoffee.com. It's a must. Use the coupon code the Go Biz Guy for $5 discount on your first purchase. Experience what 3 generations of coffee taste like. I'm telling you, you got to get that Armenian coffee. So, hey, listen, I tell you what, it's interesting because Steve Harvey, I don't listen to him all the time, but I think a lot of Steve Harvey. Uh, and so here's what he said a couple days ago, I think, when I was listening to him. And he's talking about jumping off, okay, and not into the abyss, but jumping off into business. He lived out of his car for a long time. He needed some money, and people gave him some money, and then the rest is history and everything. And he's really, but he said, if you don't jump, it's scary to try to imagine what it would be like if he didn't start just jumping. Okay. And he said, don't let the devil steal your dreams away. He said, because your parachute is not going to open if you don't jump. And so you got to get some skin in the game. You got to do some things. But if you don't jump, you will never know how how far you will soar. Okay. And I think that's the beginning marks of an entrepreneur. And I think that being an entrepreneur is a fearful thing. So today I've got an individual that his parachute opened, and it was quite interesting to read his background and everything on some things. He is the owner of a franchise that is really cool. I've ate there several times, and I really, really enjoy the wraps and their drinks. And so I'd like to introduce to you Andre Jackson. Andre, welcome aboard.
Thank you, LJ. Tropical Smoothie Cafe, and I
So
appreciate you
let me
having
ask
me
you
this
something.
afternoon.
So you grew up in Ashland, Kentucky, right? Okay. So let's kind of like, okay, during your grow up years, what was the funniest thing you've ever saw?
During my grow up years,
Or it
oh
can
man,
be recently. I mean, it can be in 24 hours ago. I don't care.
I can't think of right now just one specific thing that I can recall.
Okay.
But like I grew up with a whole lot of my cousins and family members local, and I just remember a lot of the majority of my childhood was just laughter. I mean, so we basically entertained ourselves just with some of the goofy things that we did. But at this moment, I can't just recall, one specific
Okay.
thing. But
So, what were some of the goofy things you guys would do? Because it sounds like you're a little ornery guy.
well, at that time, yes. I mean, a lot of late night just nonsense. No, obviously nothing criminal or bad, but just out late running the town, and maybe even knocking on some doors and running and that type of stuff, or just playing tricks on one another or even friends. But I mean, and even those my friends and my cousin that I grew up with, we're all still very close to this day. So. Just a lot of laughter in my early years, that's
That
for sure.
that's funny. Now, I have to go one step further because I grew up in California, and we would
Oh,
knock on doors too, but we would, and this is terrible for me saying this, but we would set a bag on fire that was full of poop and ring the doorbell. Okay,
uh-oh.
so
Yeah.
so that.
I've seen that done in movies. I've never actually,
Yeah, we
done that
did it. We
myself.
did it ourselves. So we anyway. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. So Talk to me a little bit about. So you grew up in Ashland, Kentucky, and you went to Paul Blazer High School. So did you play any football or any
Yes, sir.
sports, or what was your roots there?
Yes, sir. So once I get to high school, I limited my sports with just
Okay,
baseball and
all
football
right.
for
What
Blazer.
position you play in baseball?
Center field, and at the time, my one of my favorite coaches, Coach Wilcox, Jeff Wilcox was a coach at that time, and that man did a great job with the team. Really looked after myself, but I was his center
Oh,
fielder.
that's pretty cool. I played baseball. I'll share a little story with you because I'm pretty soon I might be going out to Utah to visit my friend. In fact, his podcast is still number one downloaded and everything. But he used to be a chaplain for the Major League Baseball. He used to play for the
Oh
Oakland
wow!
A's, and he's a dear friend of mine, and we both do martial arts. And so, at any rate, I'll share this story with you about when I was out in Vegas with my wife. Out there for a martial arts thing, and so he lived in Vegas at the time. He was in real estate and still is, I think. But so he shared with my martial arts instructor and my wife and everything, and said, "Listen, I got to tell you a little story about Lauren in baseball." And so everybody was like grinning and everything else like that. And so I said, "Kevin, really, you going to share this?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I share it all the time." I said, well, "Okay." So at any rate, he said, it was, I don't know, it may not be funny, but anyway, he said, listen, he said, I'm going to tell you about LJ. He could smack the ball really hard. Okay. And he had a wild arm. So they took him out of pitching because I'm left handed, and we put him in the outfield. Right. And so I had a good arm throwing it in and stuff. But he said, when you watch him hit, he was like almost like Babe Ruth. He would strike out a lot, but when he hit the ball, he would smack the fire out of it. Okay. So he said one day, he said, and I'll never forget this. He said, it's almost better than any pro I've seen hit. But he said he connected with the ball, and there was no fence, and it just kept on going. And so he round first, he rounded second, he rounded third, and he came to home. Okay. Then somebody, it was quite a while. Then they took the ball and they threw it in to the catcher, and he tagged Lauren. And guess what? Lauren was out. You know why? Because he never touched any of those bases. He was too busy watching the ball.
Oh
Can you
Lord,
imagine that? And he even shares that with some of his pro. Yeah,
I
he
think
shares
that's
that with some
totally
of his pro
crazy.
buddies about me. Yeah. So, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But I enjoyed baseball. I played some football. What position you play in football?
So in football, I was a running back, and then a position that we call
Yeah.
monster, which is
Linebacker.
like a
Yeah. Uh-huh.
outside linebacker type position. Yes.
I played outside linebacker, and I was kind of small. Just this is another sidebar. Some of the guys I played high school ball ended up in the pros, and we were a 4A high school in California. So being in 4A high school in California is like winning the state
Yeah.
championship in any other state. And so every year we'd go to the playoffs, right? And
Yes.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Tons of
And some of
talent
these
out there,
guys
I'm
are just
sure.
monsters. And I played a little bit of fullback, but I really appreciated outside linebacker and everything. So, um, but you know what? I tell me if I'm wrong. What do you think sports teaches you?
Uh, honestly, discipline, leadership. I really feel like it helps, kind of organize, you know, your life, and a lot of things that you have going on. It helps you deal with your emotions too. But I was just having that conversation with a female friend of mine the other day, and I guess there's no father in her two sons' lives, and I was telling her, I was like, the best thing that you can do is get your 8-year-old and your 11-year-old into sports immediately, because those coaches, they may
Right.
not fully ever replace a father figure, but they can definitely fill that void a great deal. And I mean, some of that leadership and growth that they're going to need can easily come from having a good coach. And like I said earlier, I played for a guy named Jeff Wilcox, and even a few other coaches for Ashland, Tony Love. Dowdy.
Love it.
Those coaches I'm still in contact with till this day. I mean, so like I said, I mean, a
Well,
good
just
coach
yeah,
can
and
mean the world to you.
I came from a really dysfunctional family, and we didn't have fun, but I did. So, but sports was the catalyst of me having a ground in life.
Yeah,
I could have taken a turn. I kind of took a turn for a bad thing. I ended up in jail once, but um, and I won't go into that. But I mean, I was just being ornery. So, but at
yeah,
any rate, I think that, like you said, you touched on the basis of the groundwork. I think what it does is it adds to your core values a lot, in order to make it in whatever you do. Because, even in business, I mean, the core values that I learned in sports, I did a lot of contract work for organizations that wanted salespeople and all
hmm
that other stuff, and nobody ever had to tell me what to do, right? Um, and so I think it's very valuable. And you're right. Uh, even if they're not interested in sports, and that's the reason why in martial arts, we have a lot of people sometimes with disabilities and come and train and everything, and it gives them confidence, right? Eh, eh,
yes,
Yeah, and I
yes.
think you were spot on to share that with your female friend, because uh, having not having a father figure sucks. Okay, and the whole process. So yeah, but sports is a very vital role in everything. And so um, you got out of high school. Did you go to college in between military or high school?
No, so right after high school, I had maybe about 2 weekends
Yeah,
of
right. Okay.
some good partying, and then one one day my
Oh,
grandmother,
bless your heart.
she has since passed, but I woke up. It's probably
Yeah, yeah.
3 p.m. because I had a long night, so I woke up late in the evening, and she had asked me what my plans were, and I thought she had meant probably for that night, so I told her that I was probably gonna get some
Yeah,
food
right.
and probably go and hang out with the boys again. She's like, no, no, no. She's like, no. What's your plan for your life? I was like, oh, I don't know just yet. So that day, we went downtown to the recruitment office, and I took my first ASVAB exam, which the first one is always like a test, exam. It doesn't really count, but they just want to see, on a scale where you're at. So she took me down there, and I took the ASVAB exam for the military for the U.S. Navy. And then I would say maybe 2 days later, they came to my house and took me to Beckley,
Yeah.
West Virginia, to take the real test. And then they said, well, how soon were you wanting to leave? And I was like, well, guys, I just turned 18, just graduated, so I'm kind of wanting to, enjoy my summer. So I was like, give me a few months and I'll be ready to go. And he said, well, that's probably not a bad plan because I think the Navy was kind of backed up at that time anyway. So he said, probably waiting would probably be the best. So he takes me home that day, and then he calls me back in about 2 hours. And he says, "Can you pack a bag?" I said, where we
Ha!
going now? He said boot camp.
Right?
I was
Yeah.
like, oh shit. So, so yeah, yeah, no, it was just about 3 weeks after graduation. I was on a bus to Chicago
Wow.
there to Great Lakes for
Well,
boot camp.
you know, I didn't have a similar situation, but in high school, my dad was in the Navy, and so I thought, well, I'm gonna sign up for some kind of a skill set. I'm gonna be a plumber, and I'm going to sign up for sub duty, you know. And so, so, I, so
Hmm
anyway, I went down to San Diego and to get a physical and everything, and they were shooting you up with stuff and everything. And so we walked into a room. We walked into a room, and this guy, he said, "Okay, I need for you guys." We are in our underwear, and he said, "Okay, I need for all you guys to drop your drawers." I'm thinking, "Dang, this is not right. I'm in California, and this is not healthy." Okay, and so then the guy said, and there was a guy in the middle there, and he goes, "Okay, I need for you all to bend over." And I'm going, "Oh my gosh, really? I'm not going to do this," but I did. And so this guy was looking for hemorrhoids. And I thought, you know what? I'm just not going to go in the Navy. Okay. Because if this is what
Yeah,
happens in the
not
Navy
cut out
and
for this.
nuclear sub, and I'm a plumber, I just don't think his life's going to work. And so I didn't go. But part of me really wish I would have went to in the Navy because did you get to see parts of the world?
Well, so I was one of the, I don't know how you want to call it. You could call it fortunate or unfortunate. So a lot of people do join the military so they can travel and maybe just escape things and just go see the world, which is one of the things that I was hoping to do myself. So to kind of back up a little bit, my mother passed away right before my
Oh
senior
wow.
year in
Oh
high school, which is where those coaches
yes,
truly stepped up for me
yes.
in my life. So at the time, I had several baseball scholarships, to EKU and some
Wow.
other places. So I mean, growing up, that was always my dream. So I just assumed I would be playing baseball somewhere. So that's why, after graduation, when I wasn't playing baseball anywhere, because after that happened, I mean, I just kind of, lost the
Sure.
motivation there. Um, so, when I wasn't playing baseball, I truly didn't have a plan. So that's why I did think the military wasn't be a good decision for me because that could immediately just get me
Yes.
up and out of here. So I mean, I actually kind of like that idea. But then so I joined, and at some point during boot camp, they give you a sheet of papers. They call it
Okay.
your wish list, and you can name like your top 3 or 4 places where you want to be stationed and where you want to go. So immediately I put Iran,
Wow.
Iraq,
Yeah. Wow.
Kuwait, and Hawaii on mine. Yeah, I just want to go and just dive right in
Yeah.
there and just see it all, do it all. So I got
Okay.
Virginia.
All right. Nice naval base in Virginia.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
Norfolk, Virginia. No, truly,
Yes.
it's the largest naval base. So I got that one. And at first I was a little upset because some of my other friends or people I got to know during boot camp, they were going to, Hawaii and Bahrain, that kind of stuff. I was like, man, I was like, well, here I am, just in Norfolk, Virginia, hanging out, and these guys are doing what I set out to do and see the world. But it actually turned out to be a blessing because, as you probably know, Virginia is only
Yeah.
6 to 8 hours away, just depending,
Uh-huh.
on traffic or whatnot. So for me, it was actually kind of, a luxury because after a couple months or years or so, I mean, you do start
Sure.
to miss home, you start to
Yeah.
miss your family and your friends. So for me, I was one of the few that were able to actually get my car on a long weekend or something, come back home, see people, and come back, just in time for Monday. Whereas everybody else, I had friends who hadn't seen, friends and family for years. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I mean, I don't know if you call it fortunate or unfortunate because I was wanting to travel and see the world. I spent the majority of my time like I said, in Great Lakes, Chicago for boot camp.
Oh wow.
And then I went to aviation school in Pensacola, Florida. But then after that, the remaining years was just spent
So what did
solely
you do in the
in Norfolk,
Navy?
Virginia.
What you said aviation and everything. Did you fly?
Uh,
Oh,
yes, sir. Air crew.
okay.
There's a helicopter called the MH-53. I guess if you went to Google, you could probably
Wow.
look up the Black Stallion MH-53, and that would be from our command there. But if you ever seen the very
Yeah.
first Transformer movie, it's the first time in that movie where one of the I guess the bad guys transforms into
Yeah, yeah.
a, robot
Wow.
is one of the
Okay.
MH-53
All right.
helicopters from the
Wow.
base.
So that would be
So
I mean, I'm and glad that you didn't end up in. Of course, you're too young to be in Vietnam, but my son was in the. And thank you for your service so much. I really appreciate you because just
uh,
about everybody in
thank
a
you, sir. Thank
uniform,
you.
if they're state trooper or whatever, I sometimes I'll even go up and shake their hands and say thank you because. Um, okay,
And
cool.
I can tell you they appreciate that. You don't hear it when you're in those roles. You don't hear that
Oh
stuff that
yeah.
often. Usually you might just get a middle finger or a few other choice words, but
That's cool. I
you
saw
don't hear
this
those kind of
guy
words
because
that
I had to go to
often.
the
So they
courthouse to
definitely appreciate that kind of
finalize some
stuff.
papers for to sell the house and everything, and I saw this huge state trooper, and he looked like baby Huey. He was so big, and I rolled down my window in my Subi and Wilderness. So I said, "Thank you for your service, man." He put a grin on his face, man. He said, "Thank you so much," and
See,
yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, we really need to show more appreciation for people like yourself and the Navy. My son, like I said, he's done 7 tours overseas
oof,
in the National Guard,
wow.
and he's seen some crap. I mean, killed people and been shot at, and so,
Hmm.
but it's real, and there's
Yeah. Oh
no.
yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and because I do martial arts, sometimes periodically I'll ask him. I said, "You wanna like wrestle?" And and he's buff, man. I mean, he's built like a freaking freight train, man. I mean, he's short and stout, kind of like you. And so, but at any rate,
Yes.
we got wrestling at my daughter's house one time, and I got him in a good position, and he tapped, and I said, "You just did that for fake, didn't you? Because you don't want to hurt me." And he said, "No, you got me really good." So we haven't done it since. But so yeah. So at any rate,
But that's good. Every now and again, I mean, it's okay for dad to remind the son,
yeah, yeah, right,
that you
right,
still
right.
got it. So
Well,
that's okay.
I'm working on my third-degree black belt, and so
Oh
and
wow.
my instructor's really good friends with Chuck Norris, and so we do a lot of mixed martial arts and stuff, and so it's pretty cool. And so, leading into that, you as a police officer, did you ever do any martial arts or anything?
So once again, so I went through another boot camp. So in boot camp is when we first kind of get introduced uh, to rolling around on the ground and
Okay,
doing martial arts and that kind of stuff. So we did that almost daily during boot camp. Now, once you get out, it's up to your department at that time to continue your jujitsu and your training. Now, I would say I was
okay,
with the Huntington Police Department. So when I first started, yeah, we had a training officer where we did hands-on stuff often. So whether it was jujitsu stuff or it was
right,
knife training, that kind of stuff. Obviously you don't ever want to fight somebody who has a knife, but still, I mean, if you got into a situation where you had no choice, I mean, it's good to know the best way to kind of handle that without getting you know cut up too much. But yeah, so we did a lot of hands-on training, I mean, which is just as important as firearm training. You can't firearm train enough, but I mean, more so than anything, you're probably going to end up in a fight and go hands-on. So it's always good for any department to train
well,
that.
it's
So
interesting
yeah,
because
we did a
there's a
good deal of that.
Filipino martial arts called Kali, and I know Doug Marciano, who is a big trainer in the military for Kali. And Kali, and we work with knives and trying to get rid of those. And most of the guys, and I'm a concealed weapons guy too, and everything. So
Yes.
I think it's not everybody's going to be like you and I probably, have kind of a rounded situation, but I think it's really good to have all that knowledge and everything. And so how long you were on the Huntington Police for what, 5 years?
No, Huntington Police for a total of 13.
Oh my gosh!
So I was
Wow, dang.
yeah, so I was on the road for I guess the first 5 years or so. Then I spent the last years in the homicide unit in
Wow.
Huntington.
That had to be critical and sad.
Yeah, and that's I have a lot of my customers when they come into my cafe. They say, I read an article that you were a homicide detective, and they said, I mean, that's a really awesome job. Like, why would you want to,
No,
ever quit doing that?
no.
And
Uh-uh.
and they are correct. That's probably one of the most interesting, fun jobs, I guess,
Really?
or
Wow.
yeah, it truly is. Because I mean, you see things that nobody else is going to see. You get to experience things as the world's, just living in their homes and everything's quiet, but your life is not.
Right.
And most jobs is very repetitive. So before I actually did any of this stuff, when I got out of the military, I went to school for to be a radiology
Oh
tech,
wow.
just in the
Okay.
hospital. You just sit in a
Yeah.
room all day. And you do the same stuff.
Right.
You
Take
take
pictures. Yeah.
scans and you rescan. Yeah, exactly. Very repetitive, very boring. So this job as a homicide detective, it is not that. I mean, every day is
Sure.
different. I mean, you can have a day where you're silly in the office, just going over interviews or listening to hours and hours and hours of jail calls, trying to find, one bit of
Wow.
clue, and then out of nowhere, then you can have, bodies and that
Wow.
kind of stuff, laying around. So, I mean, every day was truly a whole new task. But I didn't probably my favorite
Okay.
job. I mean, I
All
love
right.
that job, but kind of like what you were saying though. That's not a job I would suggest that anybody does for an extended period of time. I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe 10 years
Yeah.
could be max, but past that, I don't think that's just good for anybody's emotions in
Yeah.
general.
You see a lot of that crap on TV, and what is that? CIF, whatever it's called. And my
Mm-hmm.
wife
Mm-hmm.
used to love watching that all the time and everything. And I don't think there's any way to compare real life with TV shows.
No. Yeah.
Yeah,
So like,
and so there's stuff that you see, on TV, and you wonder, okay, is the police going to get down to the bottom line? Because, and just as a sidebar, what do you think there ought to be like the electric chair for everybody that kills?
for
Okay,
everybody, maybe not, but for some,
okay,
I'm not opposed.
okay,
Trust me,
all right.
I'm not opposed.
Because I
But I don't know. But
okay,
I do go back and forth because sometimes I see that as an easy out
no,
because
all right,
prison isn't fun either. So I mean, if you have to wake up every day to the same you know life in prison for the next 40, 50 years or so, 60 years or however long it may be, that as well could be maybe a
okay,
greater punishment than leaving this world too soon. So I don't know. I do go back and forth, but I am not opposed though to somebody getting you know the
yeah,
worst
because
penalty that
I
they
don't know,
deserve.
I don't know. The Bible talks about a life for a life, and talks about murder as a sin and everything. And there's a, it's a real, I don't live by the Ten Commandments because I believe in God's grace. I don't think I can ever live up to the Ten Commandments. But in our sin nature, people are going to do some crazy things because it's in our DNA. And when they cross that line to do bad, I don't think they ever get to go back. And they just keep on. They just keep on.
it, it is hard to see that reform, especially depending on the was. I mean, it is hard to imagine that someone's going to be reformed from that, especially if they go spend 30 plus years in prison and then get out. I mean, is
Right.
that person ever going to reform from that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the podcast, I probably can't share too many
No. No.
stories with you,
I
but
know.
maybe someday we'll
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get together.
we'll have a
Yeah. Yeah.
chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I
Yeah,
really
but no,
go ahead.
I definitely say that job, like I said, well, I do remember one situation. And it's not. I won't even tell you about the case itself, but this is kind of how I knew that at some point I would need to maybe search for another job or another
Okay.
career. So I got twin girls. They are now six.
They're cute as buttons
But at the
too. Yeah.
time, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. But at this time, they were two, and it was Thanksgiving, and we had just now, started to set the plates out so everybody can pray and sit down and
Yeah.
eat. And then, when you're a detective, you're always on
Right.
call. So obviously, as life would have it, I get a phone call right before we sit down
Oh.
to eat, and it's a dead
Oh
baby
my
case.
gosh. Oh.
So
Oh.
yeah. So I gotta I gotta
Oh.
get dressed and go out there to the scene, respond to this
Oh.
dead child, and we're at the hospital for hours. I gotta pick up the body,
Oh.
manipulate the body, take pictures
Oh.
and that kind of stuff. And then after a couple of hours of finishing that, I have to come back home, shower, change again, and sit down for
Nothing
dinner as if
happened. Oh
nothing happened.
gosh.
So there
Wow.
you go. So I mean, you got to be able to turn those emotions on and off every day. I mean, sometimes multiple times a day.
Ah.
So that's a life that I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't suggest that anybody does for an
My
extended period
heart
of time.
wrenches for you to even step on that in that room to make all that happen and everything. But again, I think there's sin in the world, and I think people adhere to that, and I think because this is the reason why I really appreciate police and army and navy, all the armed forces, is because they have to patrol this and they have to take care of it. Or else, can you imagine if we didn't have any police? Which I know the woke people decide that they don't want police and all this other stuff. Well,
Yeah.
when you're in trouble, you're going to make that call to somebody come and help you with a gun. Yeah, yeah.
They make the call
So I
regardless.
mean,
Yes.
stop the nonsense and everything. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
they
But
do.
whether they love it
Yeah,
or
so
not, they
shut
always
your
make the call.
mouth,
So
okay? So, but so you got promoted and everything, and you started. How did you go end up in Columbus, Ohio?
so I had another homicide case that I had been investigating. I actually had been investigating it for
Oh,
this
dang.
time probably about a little over 2 years, and it had kind of went cold, but I got a break in the case, and somebody was really wanting to get some information, but a lot of that information, the people I needed to speak to, were in Columbus, Ohio, which is about a 2 hour
Yeah.
trip or so
Uh-huh.
from here in Ashland, Kentucky. So I decided to go down there for the weekend, meet with the local detectives down there, and just figure things out. And while I was down there is actually how. So one day we had a long day, and finally someone says, "Hey, let's take a break. Let's go get some lunch." And somebody suggested that we go to Tropical Smoothie Cafe. Now, obviously, I'm from Ashland, Kentucky, and I've been to a few places, in the world, but I never heard of a Tropical Smoothie Cafe. So when he says smoothies, I'm thinking, well, you guys go ahead. I'm hungry.
I'm gonna get me a
I'm gonna
steak.
go find
Yeah.
some food somewhere. And then, yeah, right, right. But they're like, no, 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 no. Like, this is a big thing down here. They're like, just come with us. Like, you'll be fine. So I'm like, well, I'll go get my smoothie. Then later on, I'm gonna go get some food anyways. So, but we show up to this tropical smoothie cafe, and as soon as we get there, it's busy. So I'm like, okay, well, they got something going on in here. But immediately as we walked in, I was just kind of
Yes.
thrown back
Yeah.
by the setting in itself. I mean, when you first walk into one of these locations, you truly do feel like you're
Well,
on,
well, yeah. Just as a side,
an
I felt
island
like I was in
somewhere.
California
I
again
mean,
when I walked in your place. Yeah. Uh-huh.
right? So, like, just for me, just from being in little old Ashland, I had really never stepped in foot in a restaurant like this one. So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. But then I walked up and looked at the menu, and before I
Yeah.
even saw the smoothies, I saw a whole list of food first, and I was like, "Well, okay." So we got some flatbreads here, some wraps, quesadillas,
Yeah.
and salads. I was like, I can handle this. But I had never been to one, so I asked the person working. I was like, "Well, what did you suggest?" And he has said, I like the Caribbean jerk wrap, which is a spicy one, but I said I don't really like hot stuff. I was like, how hot is it? He's like, it's just a little tangy, but more so sweet. So I was like, okay, I'll go with that. And then he got me
Okay.
the Island
To cleanse your
Green
body. Yeah.
smoothie, which for me, so, yes, yes. But if you look at me, everybody thinks I eat very healthy and all that stuff. I truly do not. So so honestly, like when he mentions the Island Green, I'm like, man, I was like, I don't know, like spinach and kale and mangoes in a smoothie. I was like, that wouldn't be my first choice, but he suggested it, so I was like, you know what, I don't know what else to choose, so be it. But that meal,
Cool.
it just I was addicted immediately. So that smoothie, the green one that had never
Yes.
chosen for myself because all the green stuff, the spinach and the kale was phenomenal. And then the wrap itself. Okay, well let me first say the wrap, he lied. It was hot as hell. So the first time I had it, my eyes were watering, my nose was running. However,
Yeah.
it was so good though, I couldn't stop eating it.
I
So
love it.
like
Yeah.
I'm over here struggling and
Yeah.
crying, but I'm
That's
still eating this wrap because it was just too good. They come with a 24-ounce smoothie, so it's a big smoothie that will fill you up. And then it's a good sized wrap as well. After I eat this entire thing, I'm full, but I'm not like I don't feel like disgusted. I don't feel like exhausted and just drowsy now. Like I feel like I've just been fueled up. I feel good.
yeah. Right.
So like that was my first experience, and I was just really blown away. And I got addicted, so I ate there every day
I
that
love it.
weekend while I was
Right.
there.
Uh huh. So listen, so you've never been an entrepreneur until that point, right?
Yeah, no, sir. I have no backgrounds of owning anything, of even taking any, business classes. My parents or nobody are business owners, or at the time were business owners. So yeah, no,
Okay.
I had never even considered owning a business at that time.
Okay, so let's back into it a little bit. So you tasted the food, you became addicted to it, you liked it.
Hmm.
What was your
Hmm.
research in order to put one into the Ashland market?
Well, the first thing I did, honestly, when I got back home, so like I said, I got addicted immediately. When I got back home, I mean, there was days where I was just craving it. I wanted it, but it was so far away, and I was kind of upset by this. So my first thing I did was I told people that are in business or that usually invest in these kind of things, people in general who had the
Right.
money to do what I knew I didn't have the money
Okay.
to do. So I told all these people thinking that at some point, hopefully one of these people see what I see and they bring this here. But I guess everybody thought I was probably just talking out of my butt, and nobody really did
Yeah.
anything about it. So fast forward to maybe like a year later, I'm like, man, I was like, this, not even at this point, not even for me, like just for this area. I'm like, we need this here. So first thing I just started doing is researching. So I go to
Okay.
Google, and I look at the top 10 smoothie places, because again, this was just my first experience with Tropical Smoothie Cafe. So now I'm thinking, well, what other smoothie places are out there? So I learned of Smoothie King. I learned of a place called Pulp, obviously Tropical Smoothie Cafe, and then a few other juice bars. So first thing I did, I went to Smoothie King. There's
Okay.
now one in Huntington, and I tried theirs, which they were not bad, but it was still something was missing. It was not the same product. And also Smoothie King does not
Okay.
have food either. Now, Pulp does, but Pulp is like a smaller version of the Tropical Smoothie Cafe. So I'll tell you this. After doing some research, though, the one of the cheaper ones to build
Oh
was the
wow.
Smoothie
Okay.
King. And at the time, and this was a couple of years ago, at the time, Smoothie King was number like 2 or 3 in the category, and Tropical Smoothie Cafe
Oh
was like
wow.
number 8 or 10. So I'm thinking, well, maybe just in general, like the public or the trend right now is Smoothie King. So I actually called Smoothie King first. I called them first to see if they would be interested to bring a franchise
Okay.
to this area. And immediately
Really?
they said
Okay.
no. They looked at the map and they saw Ashland, and they probably saw our obesity rates, and they probably saw the other new businesses
Right.
that we do or don't
Yeah.
have around here, and they just said no. And they said no. Maybe if you go to like
Oh.
Lexington or Louisville, but they said
Yeah.
Ashland, Kentucky, it's a no. So I got off the phone with them, and I was like, well, this may not happen, because while I was looking for a Tropical Smoothie Cafe, their requirements were great. I mean, they wanted your finances to be,
Right.
um, you know, very high. They wanted
Yes.
your cash in
Right.
hand to be, a good amount. They wanted your
Mm-hmm.
capital to be a good amount. Your net worth and all that stuff. And then at the time, like we just
Yes. Right.
discussed,
Right.
I'm a police
Yeah.
officer, so I'm
Right.
like,
Right. Right. Right.
my net worth is not great. Yeah, like and that's why I told some of my friends that were in business, because I knew
Sure.
they had the
Okay.
background and they had the funds to do this. But nonetheless, a few more weeks
Love
go
it.
by, and
Right.
I can't sleep. I can't get off my mind. I know that it just needs to be here. I know I want it too, and I feel like if it gets here, people will love it. So I take the same route. I go back to Google and I go to the Tropical Smoothie Cafe page, and they do have an area down there for new franchisees. So I submitted just my
Wow.
information, and they called
Yeah.
me the next morning. And once again, I said, we're in Ashland, Kentucky. And at first, he looked at the map and he said, hey, have you ever considered Huntington or Barboursville or Charleston? And I told him, I said, maybe at some point, maybe down the road. But I was like, right now, I was like, if I do this for my first place, I would love to do it, in my hometown where I'm from, where I know people, and I think it'd be easier to
Uh
get
huh.
started. So I said, I would love to keep this in Ashland.
I
So
love it.
eventually,
I
they said
love it.
yes,
Yeah.
which was great. But then, but then the hard part of obviously convincing them, because obviously, when we had our interview to see if I was going to be a good franchisee, they probably have the same question that everybody else has. Well,
Nada.
what's your
Yeah.
experience in the food
Yeah.
industry? Which is none. I've never worked. Yeah, I never worked in the food before. Like I said, I after high school, I went straight to the military. and then a little bit of college, and then to the police force. So I don't know anything about food. And then they were like, "Well, what's your
None.
experience,
Yeah.
in
Right.
ownership?" And I said, "None." Yeah. We're over two. So, and then they're like, "Well, I mean, but we take it you got
I love it.
the funds for all this."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. You're
"Nope."
a star entrepreneur right here, baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. You go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the initial research was honestly a lot of Google, and then a lot of looking up other smoothie places. Then once I got set on Tropical Smoothie Cafe, I went
Okay.
back to Columbus
All right. I
maybe
love
four
it.
or five times. Met with the owner a couple of times. I called
Sure.
a few other owners over the
Yeah.
phone just to pick their brains, see how they felt about the franchise, see how many they owned, and if they were having trouble with anything. They were just loving lives and their backgrounds. And you know what I learned? What made me really think it was kind of possible? A lot of other franchisees and other owners, they were just simply previous workers that
Yeah.
had worked there for so long that they understood the
See,
operations
I love it.
and found a way to get funded and became owners. So I said, well,
Yeah.
if an employee that once worked there can become an owner someday, surely, now that I've been to the military and the police
Yep.
and, I'm a little bit older than some of these people, I'm like, surely I can find a way as well, to make this happen. So it was a lot of luck in there, that's for sure. But going back to what we spoke about earlier with having coaches and playing sports,
No, right?
so
Yes.
a lot of people think that it's my military background that keeps me pushing through things.
Uh,
I go back to when I play sports.
yes.
That keeps me.
Right.
There's never a wall that I don't think I can either climb or go through.
Right.
So it was like a 2 year battle, but I knew it was gonna get done.
Good for you because let me tell you something, man. I mean, I have a friend that just started a cleaning business. Okay. And I gave him, when I've been coaching or whatever, I charge but here recently I've just been giving it away because I've helped several
Hmm.
people generate 150,000 in new revenue. And they also have quit their teaching job. The guy has a master's in
Hmm.
agriculture, and now he's doing almost $500,000 in revenue with his pressure washing business. Local guy, okay. And so the list
Yeah.
goes on. I have entrepreneur in my DNA. I've had successful businesses. I've nearly been bankrupt twice. So it's not like I don't know what's going on, right, with being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so kudos to you. And I totally agree with you in the fact that sports and your core values that you maintain through the Navy, through you being a detective, to being a father, all this stuff has a lot of stuff to do with being an entrepreneur. As I mentioned earlier, jumping off with a parachute,
Yes, sir.
okay, is a lot of stuff on your back and you're diving into midair. And sometimes you don't know when to pull the cord in order to have that parachute expand, okay? And so I think it's real important that as an entrepreneur and somebody that wants to start a business, they think it's just really cool. As a sidebar, this guy that just started a cleaning
Yes.
business, I took his wife to lunch and everything, and I wanted to pick his brain, and I said, "About how many hours a day are you putting into this?" And his wife said, "Just two." I said, "Well, you're going to fail. Okay, if you're just putting 2 hours a day, you're going to fail." I
Yeah.
said,
Right.
you need to start making cold calls. You need to start doing this. You need to start doing that. And so I really believe that it's interesting when I interview some folks. They have a really good background in a lot of things that have correlated up to being an entrepreneur, and it's because it's not an easy life, right? I mean, uh, no, and I bet you you're.
Oh
Yeah, go
no,
ahead.
oh no. And kind of like what you said, about about the parachute and basically taking a leap. A lot of my friends, when I got close, to the dream coming true, a lot of my friends they were like, "Now you aren't going to leave the police force, are you?" And I was like, I think I'm going to have to. I mean, there's
Yep.
no to put the time in for what needs to happen. If you're going to be successful, there's no way to do both. And so like you said, I mean, here I am, a 13-year veteran now on the police force, and a lot of people think you got a comfortable job. I mean, just stay there.
Yep.
But I, I just, like you said, wasn't in a competition. I easily resigned there. And the hardest months for me were before we opened.
Yes. Right.
So what I learned recently when we went back to Columbus for like a ownership meeting is
Mm-hmm.
that almost all these owners that are, in this area, Columbus, Lexington, Louisville, Pennsylvania, they're mostly groups of people that own these.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, I'm the sole owner. It's just me. So the first couple of months leading up to even opening, I was going to the shop usually maybe 10 o'clock in the morning, and I was there to every bit of 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
just getting things
Yep.
done, getting the shelves, simple stuff, getting shelves and stuff built that need to be there, getting all the appliances unwrapped or things
Right.
out in the shelves, or putting on the menu boards, just all the minor things that people don't
Nope.
see, go into doors getting open. But then, much like you said, once the doors did open, there was no time to breathe. One of my friends saw me a couple weeks after we opened, and they said, "You lost weight, like you look skinny." I was, I'm not eating. I don't.
I'm not. Yeah.
And it's not because, yeah, it's not because like, I don't want to eat.
Right.
I don't remember to
Yeah.
eat. I'm so busy
Yeah.
throughout the day. It doesn't cross my mind to eat. And like you said, I mean, when I first opened, I didn't have any managers. I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
GM. So I'm the owner and
Right.
GM. So when we first opened, obviously nobody knew what I knew. So I was there at 6:30 a.m. to open every morning, and I would stay throughout the entire
Yep.
work day. And we close at 9. So I was there to close
Mm-hmm.
at 9. And then after we closed, I had to do the inventory and
Right.
other things. So I wasn't going home to probably about midnight or 1
Exactly.
a.m. and coming back at 6:30 doing it again. I did that for probably about our first 3 months
Yep.
of opening. I did that every single day.
Listen, I just my hat's off to you because I think this is a really rich story because a lot of entrepreneurs, I've got some friends that they started a new uh, job and they are in the software business. And I told them, I said, listen, Tyler, what you need to do is you need to be an entrepreneur inside of the job, okay? Because just like you
Hmm.
said, I mean, I have a friend of mine that works for the local Chick-fil-A. I don't know whether you know Steve or not, but Steve's a good friend of mine, the owner of the franchise. And what he's done is he courted people. He's like taken them and saw that they are a little bit special. Not everybody's worth $20 an hour. I'll just say that. Okay. Eh, No way.
No,
Okay. And so,
no.
but if you see somebody and you start grooming them for a GM or whatever, and you get to the point where you can have profit sharing or stuff like that, you start treating those people
Hmm.
accordingly. Guess what you're going to have? You're going to have the person that next time you open up, because this is going to happen for Bobby, next time they open up another Chick-fil-A, he's going to be their GM. And within the Chick-fil-A world, they make
Yes.
big bucks being a GM. Okay. And so the list goes on. And I think that small
Hmm.
business owners need to pay attention to their people. And when I had a consulting business, I had 5 consultants and I treated them very well. My going rate was 250, theirs was 125, 150. I paid them first, I bonused them, and guess what? When they went out to a hospital or a large a client law firm or something like that, I didn't have to worry about them, you know, because I treated them right. And I think that with your people skills, you've seen the good, bad, and indifferent of everybody. You know how
Hmm.
to read people, and you know who the movers and shakers are with your organization. If you don't have anybody,
Yeah, and I will say I love my staff. I don't know how often you've been to the cafe or not, but
yes,
I do love my staff dearly. I feel like I've picked some great characters,
yes,
obviously, and then they mesh very well together. Now, obviously, after 4 o'clock, the evening hours, usually you get the younger staff because that's
sure,
after high school. But nonetheless, even those guys, they're starting to catch on. They're working hard. Because one of the things that I like to do, especially for the ones that are just now graduating high school, I kind of like to like you say, kind of groom them or just show them things because most of them this is
right.
their first job. So I mean, I like to teach them some of the hardworking characteristics that you need, obviously, to prevail in life. But these guys, they're truly great. And I would say, for me, as of yet, we've almost been open almost a year now. September 1st will
Exactly.
be a
Right.
year. I haven't even paid myself
Right.
yet, so I use all the funds we get to
Yep.
obviously pay bills and to pay
Hmm.
my employees. I mean that's how, like you said, that's how important that relationship is. And when you find a good employees, I mean it's important to keep them. So I mean, as of right now, I mean, I'm not even focused on paying myself. I'm just focused on keeping
Sure.
the doors
Yeah.
open, keeping the employees happy, but more importantly, my customers happy. But for my customers to be happy, the employees had to be happy.
Right.
So
Just as a sidebar, and this has been an awesome pod, but when I go into a restaurant, one of my first things is to check the restroom. If the restroom is
yeah,
terrible,
yeah,
I question the food.
yeah, as you should.
Because listen, if
Yes,
you can't keep a clean bathroom, then you've got dirty hands. Okay, my wife used to work for the Boyd County Health Department. Okay, and so before we would go out to
okay.
eat, guess what? She'd say, "No, we're not eating there," because she saw, all the stuff.
You
And of
know,
course, it's online and everything. But so
yes, yes, yes.
it's just very interesting. So let me ask you something. Um, and kind of not kind of closing. This is, but what would you tell somebody that wanted to go from a job to being an entrepreneur? What advice would you tell them?
Oh, I would tell them that it's not easy, but it is certainly not impossible. I know when I was first doing my researches and looking online, and I saw all those requirements looking at me in the face, and I didn't meet any of those at that time. It seemed like it may be impossible, but once truly the franchisees and just having conversations, I
Yeah.
started to feel more and more confident and started to see that maybe
Uh-huh.
this is possible. So I would say that it may not seem easy. It is definitely possible, but also I would just say that just
Yeah.
don't take
Right.
no for an answer. I heard so many times throughout this process, whether it be hey, do you want to come to Ashland? No, or can I have this location? No, or look, especially looking for funds in this area. So looking for funds, lots of no's, but just don't take no for an answer. I mean, if it's truly, and like you say, it can't just be just to open the doors and have
Right.
a
Nope.
just to say you own a business. It can't be for that.
Yes.
It has to be something you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about it, then it will surely work out. That's for sure. But because I feel like if you're passionate, you'll put the work in
Exactly.
that's going to be required for it to
Exactly. I
happen.
mean,
That's for sure.
and people say, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm kind of semi-retired, and next couple of months I've got to be traveling and to solidify some business, and here's the deal: I will be an entrepreneur until the Lord takes me home. Okay? I mean, I want to
Hmm.
infuse." The best I can to small business owners so that they can grow as well. And so, I just anyway. So it is in my DNA, and it's not like I don't have any experience, right? If I had a master's degree,
Yes, yes.
or if I had a degree in master's, it's just because I have experience. It's not because I have the degree. Yeah.
The experience, yes, because I do have a few friends that went to college and they have the masters and the degrees for all this, and it was kind of funny. One of those friends that was a very close friend of mine. He just got married a couple months ago, and we was down there and meeting
Yeah.
some of his now
Okay. Cool.
big time friends in L.A. where he lives now, and they most of them have
Right.
they're a business background or a business degree, and they're
Yeah.
asking me well what's your degree in?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have a degree in any of that. But then my friend kind of stepped up and they was like, well, he doesn't have
Yes.
a degree, but he's
Right.
living the dream though. I mean, he has the experience though. So he may not have the paper, he can learn that stuff, but he doesn't have the degree, but he definitely has the experience. So I agree with you. I mean, having that
Yeah.
experience, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. So
that's the
Andre,
degree in
listen,
itself.
it
So
has been a blessing to have you on, and I really appreciate you and your words of wisdom and experience is the best, and to explore your background has been very good, and I really appreciate that a lot, and so. Thank you so much. If you can just hold on to me, I've got to kind of wrap it up with a commercial. And for those of you that wish to bring this experience, as I mentioned about the coffee, you got to get some Armenian coffee from these guys. To visit Henry's house henryshouseofcoffee.com. henryshouseofcoffee.com. It's a must. Use the coupon to go BizGuy for a $5 discount on your first purchase. Experience what 3 generations of coffee roast tastes like. Well, listen, thank you again so much, Andre. And I'm going to be making this live as soon as we get off.
Yeah.
And if you can, I don't know if you have any social media once I plug it, and you can kind of share it with everybody. This is going to be going out to about 100,000 people on LinkedIn and all over the world. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, like I said, I do appreciate you thinking about me and reaching out to me to join your podcast. It's been fun. This is actually my very first podcast. I don't know if I mentioned that before. So this is my very first time doing a podcast or anything like this. So
yeah, well,
I
it's not
truly
going to be
appreciate
your
it.
last. I'll just say that. So, and I hopefully I can come
Well,
in and
good.
we can meet and maybe go have some beers or something. Okay, so um,
That sounds good to me. And then I can share some
exactly,
of those other
exactly.
stories with
Listen,
you.
have a blessed weekend.
You
Thank
too,
you.
sir. I'll hear from you soon.